invited special guests in, including our three special guests today, who Don will introduce in a few minutes. What we do is we are an inclusive professional learning community. We do these conversations. We write about educational innovations on Medium, and you always are welcome to contribute to that if you want to reflect on one of these sessions or anything. And the purpose of our group really is to support educational leaders and to think about education a little bit differently in light of the pandemic and everything that we've all been through the last couple of years. So we're really trying to kind of inspire and enlighten people and reconnect after just a really, really hard time for everyone. And hopefully one day we're also going to be providing consulting services down the road. But right now we're just getting to know each other, and we're exploring ideas together and thinking about the future. You can find us on several LinkedIn things. And if you have your microphone on, you might want to mute right now. That would be really appreciated. Thank you. And Linktree/Actionable Inno is where you can find our website and our Medium publication and all that. So please follow us on these channels if you want to keep in touch. And you can follow us on Eventbrite so that you get updates for about future events. We have several really exciting additional sessions coming up. We have one with an app program for students next week. We have Gary Stager coming in, who's always provocative. We have two entrepreneur friends of mine who started Alpha Smart and worked for Edmodo. So lots and lots of exciting things that are going on. And if you follow us on Eventbrite, you'll get the notifications about those. If you want to join our community and be part of kind of the behind the scenes piece of it, where we're sharing lots of resources, we have a Slack group and meet internally from time to time. I can send you more information about that, and that's my email for that. So Don, I'm going to turn this over to you now. You usually do your Proust questionnaire with everyone and with our guests. And I do want to take a minute to introduce our guests and and I'll turn this over to you.
Yeah. Do you want to unshare the screen, Lucy?
Yep. Hang on.
Great. All right. Awesome. Whoa, that's a lot of faces. I see. Okay, welcome everyone. And I'm really excited to introduce to you three friends and colleagues whom I've known for the last few years. The history of our knowing one another is, and I see he's in the audience, Matt Moran, who works on one side of the park, and the park in this case is Central Park, was working with Sarah, and he sent Sarah across the park to the east side where I sometimes teach. And right, Sarah, isn't that how this is what happened? And we had a conversation. We were obviously on the same page about stuff. And Sarah at the time was bi-coastal. And anytime she was in New York, she would have sort of something like this. In a way, it was like our junto, Lucy. She would gather together entrepreneurs and like-minded people to have conversations over drink and food. And that is where I met both Lloyd and Sebastian, and we've all been in touch ever since. And Lloyd and Sebastian have been in to Marymount to give feedback to student pitches. Sarah has done the same, and so they know me pretty well. They know how I operate, how I teach, and I thought bringing the three together today. And Sebastian is ex-Avenues, which a lot of you know that, and this is his new startup, Cambio Labs. But anyway, I thought it would be great to line up the three today, and they'd share with you their approach to entrepreneurship and how they teach it. Because a lot of us have different ways of going about it, and they have three unique ways of doing it. And so that's why I'm psyched that they're here, and they are so much information and have such different points of view. It'll be really good. But okay, so anything I left out about you three? Okay, great. I got the thumbs up from Sebastian. All right. Okay, so let's start to the panel. I'm going to start with the Proust questionnaire. So I don't know if you guys know anything about the Proust questionnaire, but if you subscribe to Vanity Fair, you'll go right to the back of the magazine and you'll see they use the Proust questionnaire to usually interview a celebrity. And it was designed by Marcel Proust, the French writer, and sometimes it's used by interviewers today. Proust answered the questions in the form of a confession book album. This was a form of parlor game in Victorian times. But I've taken his questions and I've adapted them for educators. And like our students, like you can use these to get to know your students, or you could use it to get to know people. And so I'm going to spring questions from the Proust questionnaire on you three to start, if that's okay. And if you don't need to answer if you think it's too over the top, but it's a really great way to get us going. So let me pick. Okay, and I guess let's do the same question for all three so we can get a comparison. So Sarah, what educator do you most identify with?
That's a good question.
And the other, you, Lloyd and Sebastian, jump in if you have one right off the bat. I can tell you mine.
I feel like I'm going to get swayed if I hear yours.
I
I mean, this is going to sound a little like, I feel like people are going to be like, oh God, I can't believe she said this. But I think of educators, I think about the people I'm learning from the most. Okay. So that's what I mean, at first I was like, in my head, I thought, okay, who's an educator that I follow or that I listen to? And then, then I was like, okay, who do I learn from a lot? And I know it sounds cheesy, but many of you don't know me, but this is very true. I would say the kids that I work with, because I learn so much. I learn a lot from them, and they're keeping me on my toes and they're helping me see things in different ways. So, and that's who I just engage with regularly. So I think in terms of but I know that's probably not the answer. We're probably looking for somebody, one person.
Sarah, it's very funny you answer that way, because the second question in my Proust questionnaire is, what educator do you most admire? And that's very different. And that's sort of what you're saying. You're answering that question actually, right?
Yeah, that's true. I'm curious to hear what and I'm also curious to hear people that are here would say in the chat.
So Sebastian, Lloyd, do you want to take that one?
I can take I love these questions already. So I would say my soccer coach in high school, and from that, like Bill Belichick and maybe Bill Walsh is another famous football. Like some of these coaches who, we don't always think of athletic coaches as educators, but a great coach. Well, I think now everyone's watching, what's that Apple TV show?
Ted Lasso?
Yeah, Ted Lasso. Like, a great coach really cares. I think a great educator cares, number one, about the people. And then number two, has the skills to develop them in whatever capacity they're focusing on. And I think great coaches are really doing that. And they're doing it in a different way. So I'm a little biased because I call our work coaching. And so coaching as a space and how it differs from education, I think it's a subfield of education. And so those people have, I identify a little bit with that.
Great. Sebastian, over to you.
I would say my high school English teacher, Miss Catherine Bell. She was incredible. She really kindled my creative fire. She encouraged me to keep writing stories outside of class and just gave me kind of that personalized, differentiated attention that really inspired me. And if the one educator that I aspired towards, I think, is Jaime Escalante. If y'all have seen Stand and Deliver, Bolivian educator that did a lot to, empower underrepresented Chicano kids and just made them believe in themselves. And his story was just awesome. So I really hope to aspire to be an educator like that.
Wow. Okay, great. Anyone else in the audience want to fire in? I think I saw running through the chat Robert Frost, whom I'm a huge fan of. Anyway. No? Okay, so here's question 2 for either three of you. I'm just going to throw it out. What do you consider the most overrated virtue? No pressure.
Maybe it's always having an answer ready at hand.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm still tripping out that Lucy knows Catherine Bell. That's incredible.
It's not the same one. It's this is a Catherine Bell at University of Chicago Laboratories. But I just was thinking that would, and she's like an amazing teacher, award-winning teacher. And but I do know Washington International School, and that's an amazing school as well. So, but that would have been really funny if it had been the same one.
Not to take us on a tangent, I'll answer Don's question. I think one overrated virtue in kind of our entrepreneurial spaces is the grind, the hustle mentality of always having to be working until, you know, the early hours and killing yourself, and as if it's kind of a virtue signaling of how hard you work and how much you believe in your product or your venture. I think that can be sometimes pretty toxic, and you know, I believe in smart work now, and encouraging that kind of mindset of kind of having more systems in place to automate things, to streamline things. And I hope we can pass that mentality onto our students rather than just having to like grind it out all the time.
Wow. Sarah, Lloyd, most overrated virtue?
I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, it's an interesting thing to bring up. And I think about that, the martyrdom and the language around being like sacrificing and busyness. I mean, this goes into even what we see in our students in school. They feel like being busy is something to brag about. I always say it means you have poor time management if you're overwhelmed, and they're like, wait, what? Because I feel like it's okay to have balance and not to always be so stressed and scattered and, oh my God, I'm doing so much. I'm taking so many APs, and then I'm doing this, and I'm just like, oh, and then that's the conversation, is a comparison of busyness. I know that's not a virtue, but I just going off of what Sebastian was saying, what we see in this space is I like that we at WIT are just encouraging our young people that you can do good and make money and have fun. That's what you can do that. You don't have to it doesn't have to be this sacrificial experience for you. And yeah, so that's what I would probably say.
Okay, great.
I would just chime in with, I don't know if this is like I'm getting tripped up on the word virtue, but like respectability and being like like being in harmony with others. For me, that is a little overrated, especially in our world, because to do something that changes the world, often you have to be contrarian and go against people and have to deal with conflict and create conflict. And so it's sometimes you really have to be comfortable, you know, saying no to people and telling people that, like, doing it your own way.
Right. Okay, Proust question number 3. What words or phrases do you most overuse?
Oh, I whatever it takes. I mean, that's the name of my company, WIT. But then, I mean, I say do WIT a lot, and then and everybody knows that, which means I get movie clips and DMs and pictures of those words and magazines from people, like from students that, oh, they just said this in this TV show, whatever it takes. So they send it to me. I think that, and then I've got this slang with the kids. Usually respond when they're in agreement. They'll be like 100%, 100%, 100%. And I've noticed I'm starting to say that. I always have to be so careful hanging out with teenagers that I'm picking up their slang. So I find myself doing that, saying the do WIT obviously all the time, whatever it takes. And then saying 100% when I'm in agreement with something. And then I've noticed, what's the other thing that I've noticed myself saying? Well, those are the first two that come to mind, picking up that slang of the kids.
Okay.
Basically, when kids use literally, and they're not using it literally. They don't use literally. I just saw that in the chat with Eric saying basically. Yes, literally. Okay, that's my contribution to that answer.
Okay. Lloyd, Sebastian?
I got 4. The first is no, because I have 3 kids and a dog, and I find myself saying no a lot in the home, and I don't want to do that. It's hard not to. If you have kids, I think you understand. And the word yes, because I need to say no to a lot of things. I overcommit, and it's all about prioritization and essentialism if you want to do anything in this world. And so I have to say no to more things in that respect. The word spike, because our company is called Spike Lab, and we call these big sort of entrepreneurial passion projects, ventures that our young people are doing, call them spikes, because they're not always businesses. And it's a word obviously we use, but obviously it's not used by everyone. So a lot of people are like, why do you always talk about spike? Can't use a different word. So those are 3, and then I had a 4th, I forget, but I don't want to take all the time. Sebastian.
I'll say words that I'm sure a lot of us are using in our spaces: failing forward, yes and, what if, I wonder if, things like that encourage students. I find myself lately saying a lot, social entrepreneurship incubator, which is a mouthful, innovation learning platform, and that usually leads into a conversation. But a lot of little things I'm constantly pitching: gamified learning, virtual remote learning, things like that.
Okay, great. So one final one, and we'll get on with our panel discussion. Who is your favorite hero of fiction?
It's interesting because I'm making myself go first, because I think what happens with me sometimes, it takes me back to being in school, where I think I should wait because maybe my answer is not going to be I want to have everybody else answer to see if I'm on track, or my answer is going to be as profound as the other person's, and I just want to call BS on that. So I unmute myself and speak because I want to go with the first thing that came to mind, and I don't know why, because it just depends on what kind of mood you're in. But do we have any people here that loved the book Little Women? If there's any Little Women fans here. And the character Jo is one of my most favorite fictional women characters. And okay, Diane says, I love Jo. So it's kind of like, if you know why Jo is an inspiration. And because as a woman, I know she captured for me, especially when I was younger. I'm in the city, that's why you can hear the ambulances. That she felt like she had this drive and grit and just sense of self. And that's something I've always strived for. So I think that's the first. And then she did her own thing, and she wrote, she built, and she created. I've done the same. Yes, Anne of Green Gables. Oh, Jo for Halloween. That's so cool, Diane. I want to see pictures. Anyway, that's my answer. And if you know, Jo.
Lloyd, Sebastian, your favorite hero of fiction?
I'm like trying to decide between 2. I'll let the audience pick for me. So it's either MacGyver, if any of you remember MacGyver, and Indiana Jones. Those were 2 really, really, really great ones for me. One is a little more of the engineer, the thinker, but he's also the adventurer. And Indiana Jones is obviously an intellect, but also, an adventurer, explorer. So those are 2 big, my big identities. We talk a lot about identities in our work with our students, and to find themselves before they build things. And for me, it's educator, entrepreneur, and explorer. And so like, obviously the fictional characters I like kind of have that.
Okay.
Lloyd, breaking the literary canon. I thought we're just talking about books here. If we're gonna go there, like, I'm a big fan of Batman. The character. But
Sebastian,
I would say,
that's my one. Batman. I had Batman, so snap.
yeah, the inventor, tinkerer, doesn't have the superpowers, but he makes things happen. but I was thinking about books, and I'm a big fan of Garcia Marquez, kind of magic realism and really surreal thinking, and really being out there. And Love in the Time of Cholera was a book that I really loved growing up. And Florentino Ariza was just this romantic, idealistic, hopeful guy that ended up, pursuing his love until he was an old man. And I think that's really cool and notable.
Great. So if you want to know more about the Proust questionnaire, I've written a piece on it in Medium, and you can see what I question myself, but it's really great, I think, to do. And I'm constantly thinking, what more can I do with this? There's hidden gems in this thing for education, and I'm in search of it at the moment. But it's great fun. So I want to pass it over to you three so we can hear your story, and then we'll open up to the rest of the gang in the room. So I don't know how you guys want to do a 1, 2, 3, or have you decided, or over?
We decided what?
Who's going to talk first, second, or third?
We've decided nothing.
We decided nothing, but we will, like we have. So I'm going to go first, and I think I'm going to kick it over to Sebastian, and I think Lloyd's wrapping us up. I think that was the plan.
Okay.
Actually.
Sounds good.
What do you want us to keep it valuable to those in attendance? I'll keep it short and sweet, and then maybe when we jump into Q&A, we can dive deeper on the things. But I'm a former elementary school teacher. Before elementary school, I worked in television and film. And the last one that I worked on was Elf. And I always say that when I go to classes and visit, because it's like, and immediately the kids like me. They may have, like, they're just like, oh, she worked in Elf. She knows Will Ferrell. Oh my gosh. Right. So that's my opening line in most classrooms when I go visit or talk. But I used to work in TV and film. I went into education. I was a teacher here in California. Last in, first out policy means that the last person hired is the first one fired. Most stupid business concept ever. And that's how the state was run and still is. And so great teachers would be let go every year. And I was let go every year and then rehired. But then on that 4th year, I just thought, this is so toxic and I don't want to, this isn't a healthy scenario for me. What would it look like if I took, LIFO. Yeah. That's what they called it, LIFO. Cute little acronym for a way to like mess up your life, but that's okay. It worked. So I was let go. And then I just had that conversation with myself on, if I could wake up tomorrow, what would I do? And my answer was, I would take what I learned from the classroom and help young people keep making a difference. It really was that simple. My first form of doing that was through a television show concept that I pitched to ABC. And then they said, please go get footage on what you're talking about. And I did. And here we are over a decade later, running a nonprofit organization and a for-profit coaching program. So it's important to know that what I'm doing today is not what I thought I'd be doing 10 years ago in terms of the execution of my passion and my heart. But the passion and the heart is still in action of really inspiring young people to take their gifts and their talents and make a difference. And we do that at WIT through college credit programs, and that we host virtually. We do it through a virtual membership program. So think about what we're all doing right here. And then think about that in terms of young people being able to log in every week and connect with CEOs, entrepreneurs, leaders, other like-minded peers around the world, and have hangouts and conversations about their business and get strategy and support. And then we do it through one-on-one coaching. And we also have a podcast where we only interview teen or tween entrepreneurs, because my commitment is to all the places and spaces that I get to be in. I want to make sure that tweens and teens also get to be in them too. I think that's the gift of being an adult, and the responsibility of being an adult as an educator is to create the spaces for our young people to shine. The name of the podcast, Do WIT Podcast. And we have a great Instagram account and wonderful teens that we get we get teens who are featured in Forbes and Entrepreneur, and also the teen who's just starting out their bracelet company. And we think it's valuable for everyone to hear all the ranges of entrepreneurship. I'm happy to chat more about any of those things, how we do college credit programs, how we do our virtual community, how we do one-on-one coaching. And then what I do also on the side with my personal company around going in and helping schools build out their entrepreneurship programs, not with the WIT program, but making your own program at your school. So I'll turn it over to Sebastian.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah. So my background is in social entrepreneurship. I started a coffee company called Cambio Coffee almost 10 years ago in Shanghai, China. And I think similar to Sarah, I never expected to be in business or entrepreneurship. My heart was always in creating social change and trying to empower disempowered communities. And I ended up discovering coffee because my family's from South America. We have really great high altitude Bolivian coffee, and it's great coffee. And I got to interview a bunch of farmers there and realized how unjust the coffee industry is, and decided to launch a social enterprise projects and offer farmers, high quality prices for their organic specialty coffee. So I eventually found some investors to back that venture in 2012, moved to Shanghai and started Cambio Coffee. Lots of trials and tribulations, ups and downs. We operated for almost 6 years. We had our own cafes. We had a wholesale coffee business. Our cafes became community spaces as well, which is really cool. All those entrepreneurial learnings and things that I wish that I had learned in business school and didn't, and had to take the hard knocks to really absorb them. I thought I wish I could teach the next generation these things earlier in a more practical way. I wish we could have this kind of education in high school to make it way more accessible. And that's kind of the inception of these early ideas of becoming an educator. I started teaching a little bit in Shanghai at NYU Shanghai. I taught a couple courses around leadership and entrepreneurship, and first got to interact with high schoolers, and something clicked. I was super inspired to continue my life path as an entrepreneur and really think about the limitations of what I was doing with a coffee company. Hadn't made as much impact as I'd wanted to at that time, and decided to kind of shift gears and open myself up to becoming an educator. 3 years ago in 2018, 3 or 4 years ago now, I moved to New York City to run the social innovation program at Avenues, the World School. So with those classes, we were able to pilot some really cool programs where students launched their own ventures, their own businesses. Sarah and Lloyd have both been in my classes. And it's been great to have, real world innovators, investors, entrepreneurs enter the classroom, and to have students interface with the real world that way. We did some intra-school competitions, which I think are awesome. We were advancing design thinking in the classroom and across schools. And those projects were incredible. And really, I got to cut my teeth as an educator and develop programming around social innovation. And I think ultimately, in my heart of hearts, I am a social entrepreneur, and I want to create access to this education for many, many more students. And with a price tag of 50 to 60,000 US dollars to go to a school like Avenues, that isn't available to most families and most kids. And I really wanted to bring this kind of education to low-income school districts, to communities of color that have historically been marginalized from business ownership and from entrepreneurial education. So that's part of the mission in creating Cambio Labs. We're a nonprofit that develops social entrepreneurship programming. And our mission is to bring it to as many schools as possible, and to especially center low-income school districts. So we practice a buy one, give one model. For every school that pays for our programming, we will sponsor a free program for a high needs Title I school. So two other things I should mention is, one, we have a very strong focus on technology now. As I mentioned, we're building a digital platform, a gamified learning platform for students to access, where they can be users, they interact with video lessons, they earn points. So it's a gamified, engaging way for students to learn about entrepreneurship and go through the course. And I should also mention that we are forming partnerships with companies and mentors to offer their services to students and to coach them through the entrepreneurial process. And if students earn enough points on the platform, they can gain rewards, which can be services from companies or from individuals. And I'm happy to say that our first pilot with the school just kicked off this week. We're working with CompSci High, a school based in the Bronx. And I've totally shifted spaces from going from an almost exclusively white high-income space to a classroom that is in a low-income school district, and all of my students are now students of color that wouldn't have access to this kind of learning before. So it's the beginning of a big journey ahead of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Awesome. What Sarah and Sebastian have in our building is amazing. I encourage everyone to check it out. And after this, but a little bit about me. I grew up in New York. My father was a lawyer, my mom a real estate broker, and I was sort of encouraged to, I think my mom wanted me to be an investment banker, and my father a lawyer or educator. He comes from a family of educators, so that was always in me. But I was very risk averse. I went to a great private school in New York. I was kind of blessed with that kind of education, but I was sort of pushing me down a track. It was very hard for me to realize that I am an entrepreneur and sort of that's what I love, even though I was doing it. It took me a long time to realize it. Third grade, I started a little snap bracelet business that in my school that got banned by the school. And in college, I created Couch Potato, which is I literally took couches that were thrown out at the end of the school year and sold them in the beginning of the school year to new students. And, you know, it's sort of, I just love that, building things. Out of college, I started a nonprofit and lived in Argentina for 6 years. And so, you know, realized this whole social entrepreneurship thing, which I think everyone, at least on this panel, I think we connect with each other because we're edupreneurs or social entrepreneurs. They go together. But it took me a little while to realize that. And then, you know, so that always was a bit of a chip on my shoulder. Like, why is it so hard for young people to realize that they can pursue this sort of career and be more supported by the system, the educational system? And so that led me, so after starting a number of things, I've started 7 ventures now. I've raised millions of dollars in funding. I also am an investor, so I've invested now millions into various ventures and as an LP into funds. And so I'm on both sides of that table. And one of the things I started with I joined a friend who started it, was Dev Bootcamp, which was the first coding bootcamp, which we expanded nationally and sold to Kaplan in 2014. And after that, I ran a startup incubator for 4.0 schools, which was a nonprofit, fully nonprofit, to drive innovation in K-12 education in the US, funded by Gates and Walton family, and Eli Broad founded the big education funders. And that was my first foray into actually teaching entrepreneurship, because we're teaching it to edupreneurs, usually teachers, educators who are leaving the classroom to start things. And from there, I realized, like, we got to be teaching entrepreneurship to young people, and not entrepreneurship, but like innovation ability, skills, mindset, because they're entering into an innovation economy and world where that needs to be taught above, in addition to a lot of the core things. So I started Spike Lab to do that, and to play one part in a bigger ecosystem and movement that I feel like we're all a part of, which is, to build those skills. And my model is very intense one-on-one coaching with students who are willing to make it one of their top 2 or 3 priorities beyond academics in high school. So we work with teenage entrepreneurs. It has to be like a sport. It has to be something that they're really committing to, because it's going to take many hours every single week for a long period of time. It starts with a 12-week commitment to the coaching, and then they continue monthly after that. And they continue with us as long as they need to work with us. And so we're like trading wheels on a bicycle. We help them identify an idea and then launch it. And in our program, you have to actually be committed to launching. You have to actually be committed to having impact and in the world. So product market fit of some sort, and then rolling, and then hopefully continuing on to have bigger impact. We have students who've raised venture capital. We have students who, are featured obviously in like newspapers and things. So that's the sort of focus is students. We go direct to families. We work directly with the family, not through schools. And the other thing I just want to mention is something I didn't think about in the beginning, but it's so obvious now, and it's at the core of our mission. So our mission is purpose-driven innovators for life. And the core of that is purpose. That developing purpose is really the most important thing in this whole process, especially around adolescence, the period of adolescence when they're forming their identity, who they are. And this sort of project is so incredibly powerful in channeling and building self-worth and confidence if they're picking something that corresponds to something that is meaningful to them. Because then they invest in the things that give them that inner sense of meaning, and it develops that, and confidence comes out of investing. So that's something I didn't realize going into this work, was how profoundly powerful it is in developing that sense of confidence that then drives motivation and allows them to follow through on not just the project, but on lots of things in their life.
Awesome. Okay, thanks guys. Great stories. And I was laughing at Sebastian's comment that he hadn't heard some of your Lloyd stories, which is funny. So I want to open this up to our audience. Or were there questions in the chat? Lucy, was there anything? Or let's just open up.
People are really love the stories and are inspired by you. And for me, listening, that's the kind of feedback that I'm seeing right now. For me, I think you guys have packed a lot into your relatively young lives. And so that's so interesting to me. I think you're modeling for others how to pivot and how to reinvent yourself and how to apply the skills you've learned in one venture to another. And for me personally right now, I'm struggling to kind of figure out what my next thing is. And so this is really helpful to me on a personal level, just hearing the different things that you've done. I guess the question I have for you is, what's a really particular powerful story that you have with a student group that you've worked with, or a school that you've worked with? I would love to hear about something that's been really exciting to you in that regard.
I feel like I'm the one that keeps like taking the mic, but I guess I can just, I don't want there to be too much dead air for our guests. Okay. So
that's fine, Sarah. It's easy to mute you. Don't worry.
I know that's true. That's true. You were asking, I think, about like an example of like an inspiring story of the kids. I think that was the question. And I think the thing that I'll just say, because I it really got me. I think I'm saying your name right. Is it Charla? That Charla had mentioned that Charla. Okay. That wanting to teach innovation and then wondering if they could, but then listening to this, feeling inspired to do that. And I just feel like sometimes the things that we're doing here, like maybe in this space, entrepreneurship, innovation, it can sound really overwhelming. And I would be interested to chat about how it can be a very simplified experience. It doesn't have to be such a big deal to go in and inspire a young person to start seeing how they could use their gifts and talents to make a difference. And so I'm open to having that conversation offline with people or here. Sometimes we overcomplicate things because maybe we think it sounds more impressive and it's actually pretty simple. So I'll say the thing that continues to get me in the work that we're doing is just how quickly a child can go from being so resistant and unclear and insecure about their place in the world to feeling like, maybe just maybe I don't have to wait till I'm older to actually start doing something. Maybe I can take a talent that I have. And I'm thinking of two people, that my girl Busola, who goes to the school Uncommon in New York City. Really, she really just, didn't like me. she didn't like my expectations and how we do WIT. And that's okay. I'm open to that. I was very resistant to authority as a kid and still am. So I appreciated that. And then here she is now. She was recently in the Wall Street Journal. This is a short period. I mean, we're talking less than a year, and she's created a braiding company. She braids hair, and she's using this gift that she already had, just didn't know how it could actually translate to something. And this is kind of like the kicker, because we really want them to launch a business and make a difference and address some kind of missing thing in that they've noticed. And do you know what she's doing? She's teaching, I'm not joking, she braids hair and then she teaches the Constitution and the amendments to young people because she feels like they don't know them. And she calls her company Braiding in the Amendments. And if I have time, I'll see if I can find the link and share it here. And it's just this idea that somebody else could say, well, how is that sustainable? And is that scalable? And what will the investors think? That's not what I'm doing. Maybe, sometimes we have our kids get investment dollars, but that's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing here at WIT is saying, let's kick off your entrepreneurial journey. Let's show how you can make some money and make a difference and use your skill sets. We've got a girl, 12 years old. She makes bracelets, beaded bracelets, and she sells them at a local hair salon. And she's raised enough money to give $500 to Pet Encounter Therapy because her thing was every bracelet makes a difference. And so she puts proceeds towards funding a dog to go visit kids in a hospital. She's been on New York news, San Diego news. She's won awards. She's only raised $500 for animals, but because it's such a clear project and business, I make these bracelets and I sell them at the store or on my Instagram channel, and then I give this money back. Look at all the educators here. Think about all the teachable moments there around math, around public speaking, because we get them on the news, writing, because they write their answers to the interview questions. So it's really, those are just examples of the kind of work that we do. Yeah, I actually do, Lee. I do. And I got an email from one of my kids today, and I'll copy and paste it and send it here. And then you can click on the link to see what he's doing now. Yeah, we definitely have kids that go off and create profitable businesses. Some don't go to college, some work on their businesses instead. But I wanted to share with everybody here that they don't always start like that. They start like the bracelet companies. They start like the braiding company, and then it builds into something along the way. But I'll stop talking now, and Lee, I'll go get that email and post it here so you can see an example of that and click on the link of this kid's company.
I know our time is limited. Sorry, Lloyd, I'll be brief. But just to talk a little bit about inspiring student projects, I think one kind of relationship and program that developed was around community design. I think maybe a lot of elite private schools kind of face a sticking point of how to make their relationships with the local community less self-serving, how to make it sustainable and actually a win-win for community partners outside of kind of the community day that you do with your students. So we started this program at Avenues that I got to run. This class called Community Design Incubator, and I was really inspired by Tanaya Mitchell's writings about critical service and service learning and how you can create relationships that are sustainable and really centering the community as community members as experts in the design process. So kind of created this whole participatory design course that we created, and it required unpacking a lot of uncomfortable talks about privilege and race and systemic oppression and how to sensitively engage community members. And it ended up being a really beautiful course where our students co-created a mural with local community members. In one instance, they created an intergenerational talk session for the seniors at a local senior center with young people. They created youth initiatives in local NYCHA communities. So students that would have never interacted with those communities in their normal school day, it really transformed to something really empowering. And those community partners, I'm in touch with to this day, and I'm working with my own nonprofit. So it really established something good there, I think, and long term. And just to quickly touch on the idea of, will all students create a profitable business? The reality is no, less than 5%, if that, are going to actually just continue their businesses, in my experience, through college. But I think the point of it's really to equip them with 21st century skill sets and that entrepreneurial mindset, which they can transfer into getting a job or starting the businesses later in life, or just being better equipped, to survive in a very unpredictable world. They learn all that through entrepreneurship without necessarily, launching their businesses for real.
Yeah, so we call it a spike because it's not a business in most cases. Most of our students are not making any money and aren't going to, and that's okay. So I'll give you an example that I love. One student, she came to us, she was really into cosplay, which, if you're not familiar, is a sort of interest in dressing up, makeup and clothes, and often in an intricate way where you make your own costumes in characters of often anime and other sort of subcultures, and you go to these conventions, and there's this whole subworld around cosplay. Anyway, that was one of her passions and interests, and it wasn't clear like what kind of business comes out of that. But working with her, it became sort of apparent that one strong identity was that she was the child of a single mom, and she lived in Taiwan, where there's even more stigma around that, and it's something she literally never talked about, even in the family. And it wasn't even something that she brought up with her coach, but through our sort of self-discovery process in the beginning, the coach realized that this was actually a big deal for her. And so through conversations that ended up working in, and so what she ended up doing was going out and interviewing a lot of almost like anthropological interviews of children of single parents and alternative forms of family. What is a family structure, alternative form? And she got into that. It was very meaningful to her. And as you can tell, there's like nothing about business here. And as she got into that and learned about it, she ended up developing self-portraiture photography, where she would dress up using her cosplay skills to do portraiture that reflected these people, composite characters of the people she was interviewing, and sort of build a photography exhibit around that. And then she did pop-up exhibits. She didn't wait to get a gallery to show her art. She went out and used Airbnb and free places to do pop-up exhibits, and she would market it and invite people. And she got people to come, and the art became an entry point to conversation, which she mediated in these circles. And it became sort of a powerful place to actually be able to talk about this issue. And so it's funny, I even get emotional because she's an amazing student, and I love the work she did. Anyway, sorry, I've actually never gotten emotional around this before. I've told this story 100 times. Anyway, so she had a lot of impact. It changed her life. It got press. It was really cool what she did. And so there was no money there, but it was an important initiative. So those are the sort of projects that we do. There's a lot of businesses. We have a student now who's doing a chicken management service. So he has backyard chickens. And during COVID, the backyard chicken industry or hobby, I guess, grew 400%, according to him. And so there are a lot of people with backyard chickens. And so he, almost like a pool management service, he now has 4 poop cleaners, he calls them, or coop cleaners. His tagline is, "We'll scoop the poop in your coop." And so like he has these people going around cleaning out these chicken coops, and so that one does have, you know, a profitable angle to it. So there's all kinds of things that people are doing.
Right, thanks, Lloyd. I think Marcy has a question. There's a hand up, I see, Lucy.
Yeah, that was from a little while back. I think it was during Sebastian's conversation. It's not really a question, but just an observation. I know so many kids that have done like social service through their school, and you know, they're kind of only partially bought into it. And I think what's so cool about what I'm hearing here through entrepreneurship and innovation, it's really about ownership of the student. If it's the student's idea and the student's passion, there's just so much more meaning to what they're doing. And I think that that's what's so cool about the innovation and the entrepreneurship part of the social outreach, that I think makes a huge difference for students and so impactful. So I just wanted to throw that in. It wasn't really a question, just a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Marcy. James Deck, you have a question I see in the chat. You want to ask these guys?
Sure. So I'm about to start a competition where students pitch business ideas that solve local problems in their communities. They could be businesses or nonprofits or civic organizations. So I'm just wondering, like, what's some good advice that I can pass on to kids that are entering this competition?
We do a lot of pitch competitions at WIT. So we do them virtually, and this is for every educator here. Your kids can pitch on our WIT Fast Pitch on our Instagram. We have we'll do like a WIT Fast Pitch, and the first people to sign up are the first ones that get it, and they come on live and they pitch live for 1 minute, and then the audience votes in the comment section for 24 hours, and then the winner gets $100. And then we do pitch competitions at the closing of every college credit course. And then we do pitch competitions like the one that we're doing at South by Southwest EDU in like a month. So I'd love to give you advice on like what works and what doesn't work. I'll say a really good thing to do with pitch competitions is to give them their rubric. I mean, that may sound very obvious, but the rubric ahead of time, like what the judges are going to be doing, and letting that really drive their development of their pitch, so that there's no mystery on what's to be expected. And to be very clear on what the why is of this pitch event, because maybe every pitch has a different reason. Your elevator pitch has a different reason versus your pitch that you sit down in a board meeting and you're talking about investment, or you're pitching on Instagram, or you're pitching for $1,000 at a competition. So I feel like getting really clear, the student being very clear on why they are pitching and what the potential end goal, what the end goal is from them, and what the wins could be for them is really important. And then I think the thing that I mentioned here in the chat that I see, which is something that I wish people would stop doing, both adults and kids, is literally lying in their pitches, because they feel like that makes them sound better. So what that would sound like is, oh, we've helped thousands of people. And then you say, oh, really? Like, tell me more about the thousands of people that you've helped. And then really they haven't. They hope to one day help thousands. And I always say, be honest about where you are in your journey for a couple of reasons. One, people respond well to that. Then you can have an ask around what you need for support. And also, if you lie about what you've done, then you never really can authentically celebrate when you actually achieve the thing that you've been saying that you've already done. So you can't really go on Instagram when you actually do help 1,000 people and then say, well, we helped 1,000. Everyone's like, yeah, I thought you already did help thousands of people. Young people have gotten this misconception from adults that when things sound bigger, it means it's better. And it's not true. We tell our young people, you help one dog get rescued and get housed. That's powerful. And imagine that story in a pitch that we helped one, and with your help, we can help more, versus we're helping tons of dogs, helping them get shelter. I mean, it's not good. So I love diving into pitch competitions and supporting with pitch competitions, because I've had the chance to be on both the judging side, the coordinating side, the funding side. So any questions you have, I'm happy to help.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, Elizabeth Holmes. Yes.
Right. I couldn't resist. I could not resist. Brilliant book, brilliant documentary. If anyone hasn't seen it on Elizabeth, they're both just excellent. Any final questions for our three great guests? Your last chance, they're going to leave. No?
I'll ask one last question. So if I put your resources in the chat, and if there are other links that you want to share with everybody, this might be a good time to do it too. And if particularly educators in the audience, if they wanted to get involved with your programs, what's the best way to go about it? Do they send you an email? Do they watch the pitches on Instagram? What would your advice to be if they wanted to kind of get going with what you're doing?
It's just through me. Just kidding.
Talk to Don. He's my personal assistant. No. Reach out, direct. My email I'll post now. It's just lloyd@spikelab.com. And we have a network of 21 coaches, Spike coaches. And we really look for three things. One is, and if you're interested or you know someone, we're actually always looking. And our coaches are experienced entrepreneurs, so they have to have some experience of some sort. It doesn't have to be business entrepreneurship, but they have to, have some of scars, we call it. The scars and the ups and downs and the WIFIO moments. WIFIO stands for "we're fucked, it's over" moments. And knowing, so that plus the educator in them. And so those are the big things we're looking for. And yeah, if you're interested, that's the biggest way to get involved, but also if we can help in any way, and always looking to talk to cool people and help out.
Just real quick, we are in pilot mode at the moment and seeking to expand our school partnerships for next year. So it might be a good time to start thinking about what programs you could institute at your school. Please be in touch. I'd love to show you our online platform, our tech, and all of the resources behind what we're building. I'd love to partner. Thank you.
Just want to say thank you for showing up today and for listening to us, and just my emails in the chat, but also just to remember that you can start right now with the kids that you're working with. You don't have to use my program. You don't have to even, it's out there for you to use and everything. But the idea is that you actually have it in you with your young people when you just ask them the question, what would you like to see done differently at our school? What would you think would be better when you're driving home or you're in the subway? You look around, what things annoy you that you think ugh, why does that happen? And remember, adults did that. So adults suck and you're smarter than them. That kind of stuff gets them excited. Adults created these problems and now you can solve them. And they truly will lead you. And also we don't have to have all the answers either for them before we get started. I don't often have all the answers, but we can all work together to support the kids. But just being somebody who actually listens to the kids' response to what would you like to see done differently, you're already exceptional if you're asking that question, because they rarely get asked that question.
All right. So thank you, Sebastian, Lloyd, and Sarah. What a great panel. What a great trio. I'm so glad you came on. And if there's anything I can do for you, do not but reach out and tell me. I'll be seeing a couple of you soon, I know, in my Teachers College Columbia class, because you were nice enough to say you would stop by. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys physically again when Sarah's out here, even before if Sarah's out here, but let's, physically get together and have some drinks and food. But thanks for everything. Awesome.